members refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Please remember to keep your microphones muted when you are not talking, and please do not interrupt discussions until you have been notified of your intention to speak and you have been invited to do so. Can we now move on to our afternoon's agenda? I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome in Jason O'Brien, Dave Leach, Councillor Dave Daniels to our meeting this afternoon, and Councillor Fiona Cross. And Simon Rose. I do apologise, Simon. I missed you. I do apologise. But Chris, do we have any apologies?
We do, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillors Stephen Evans and Rose Seaborn.
Okay. Do we have any declarations of interest? Okay. Can we move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of May? Just to remind members that these minutes relate to the draft community wellbeing strategy, and can I ask you to scan through them for accuracy and confirm that the minutes are an accurate account of the meeting? Everyone agreed? Okay. We'll now move on to item 4, which is our action sheet, and I hand you over to Rebecca to update members on any outstanding actions.
Thank you, Chair. So there's only one action on the action sheet, and that was to receive the recommendations from the last committee, which you have all had as a committee. So unless you have any questions on those, I can share the Chair.
You're happy? Yeah. Okay. You're happy to move on? Thank you very much. We go on to item 6, which is update report, progress against the adopted action plans. So can I ask you again to introduce this to our members?
Thank you, Chair. So since September 22, the Healthier Overview and Scrutiny Committee has made numerous recommendations, a high proportion of which have either been accepted or considered for adoption by the Executive. It's considered good practice and sensible to reflect on what extent recommendations have been embedded and acted as a catalyst for delivering service improvement. Just to remind members, any recommendations that may have been rejected have been excluded from this monitor, but there weren't any for this committee that were actually rejected. Strategic directors and exec members are in attendance today if you do have any questions on the updates on recommendations that are contained in the appendix. Also, just to add, to ensure the impact of scrutiny is properly evaluated and recommendations are not just accepted but acted upon, a summary of impact has been produced by the relevant officers or exec members against each set of recommendations for you to determine whether scrutiny activity did have a positive impact. Just to remind members, you're not here to re-scrutinise these issues. You're here merely to determine whether you are satisfied with progress in implementing the recommendations that you've made. If you are happy and satisfied that they have, then you can remove them from further monitoring. If you're not satisfied and would like to maintain them on monitoring, I will keep them on in the pack, and then you'll review them at the next opportunity where you can receive updates on those recommendations. Also, just to add, the updates run from September to the February cycle of the Healthier committees. It's determined that the gap between the March and the May meetings is too soon for those recommendations to have been implemented and for you to have reviewed progress. So these are just for the first few cycles of meetings. So over to you, Chair, for you to start on the first set of recommendations.
Please read through the recommendations on our visit to Tiglass and Doran. And the recommendations were that the committee recommends that close working relationships with the new committee's directorate be developed to ensure the community work aspects of Tiglass and Doran services continue to strengthen and grow.
Sorry, Councillor Clarkson, did you have your hand up? Sorry.
No, apologies. I did have it up just to say I couldn't hear, but that's been rectified. For some reason, my cursor's not working properly.
David.
Yeah, just to say that
does appear to have been brought into events given the change on the 1st of April. So it seems that's a positive.
Do you want me to go through all the recommendations, or are you happy that progress has been made? And do you want to take this off our agenda or leave it on?
I just note on the Tea Glass Dawn recommendation number 3, that hasn't been actioned. So are we happy for it to be removed knowing that that hasn't been actioned?
It's up to you, members. You can either remove the set of recommendations in entirety, or you could just keep that one recommendation on if you'd like to keep a review on that particular recommendation.
Yeah, I think we should keep a review on it.
What's everyone's opinion to keep it on our agenda? Okay. Yeah.
Just as a general comment, following on from Jarrett's comment, yes, I think we're happy that all the recommendations that have been made, apart from that one, have been addressed. But because the whole project is very much an ongoing project with different stages, I know, coming up, and quite complex financial arrangements, I would recommend that we put it forward to look for consideration anyway and keep it on our work scrutiny programme.
So yes, members, you can discuss that in the
We'll
vision
discuss
session.
that. Okay. Our next item was the Market Stability Report. I'm sure you've all had time to read it. So rather than go through it all, can you make your views if we've made enough progress, or if you want to ask any questions, or if you want to carry it forward?
Thank you. I did just have one question. I've noticed that they're all in the process of being actioned, which is good. But it does say at the end that this is a report that's produced on a 3-yearly basis. So do we need to wait until the next one's produced in a couple of years and then scrutinise that? Or do we need to keep this one on because to ensure all the actions do come to fruition?
David?
Thank you, Chair. Picking up on what my colleague has said, I would suggest this may be something to come back to in 2 years' time before the next one is done, so that we've scrutinised it, but we probably don't need to scrutinise it next year. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I would recommend it in 2 years hence.
Yeah, that's fine. Jason?
If I could just, I totally concur with that. I think that to bring it back 2 years in advance of the 3-year cycle is really prudent. Clearly, what I would say in terms of the activity, a lot of the activity will form continued business as usual, and you know will be a constant flow of activity.
Sorry, our next item is the update on domiciliary care. So, anybody want to come in on any of the issues?
Thank you. Yeah, I noticed recommendation 2 hasn't been actioned. So again, do we want to keep that recommendation or keep the whole thing, or just that recommendation to look at again?
You can vote Alfie.
Just to say, if the action on the recommendation does require staffing to stabilise in domiciliary care, we might be reviewing that for quite a while. So I'm not sure whether it's best to keep it on there and keep it on there for the next couple of years, or to take it off and look at it again when the situation improves. If anyone can advise.
Sorry, members, if I can just come in. Obviously, it's up to you to determine whether you're satisfied with progress on those recommendations. What I will just add to it, just by taking it off this monitor, doesn't preclude it from you taking further scrutiny in the year ahead. It may be that you pick a specific item under domiciliary care, again, going forward next year, or maybe next year you pick domiciliary care. So it's for you to determine really against that recommendation, is that something that is going to change by next year, like you mentioned, Councillor Best? It certainly doesn't preclude you from scrutinising it again, should you choose to select that.
Put it on and we discuss in our visioning, shall we? Yeah. Linda, do you want to come in? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was the suggestion I was going to make if we discuss it at visioning. This is an area that has got some capacity to actually decline and become worse, rather than just the one-way sort of progress. So if we could discuss that at visioning, I'd be very grateful.
Community resilience. Do we have any views on progress has been made or anything on that one?
I think it's positive and helpful that all the recommendations were accepted, and obviously this was a meeting that we were all in together, as it were, so I'm conscious it was a pilot and I think it was very effective as part of that. I'm also conscious it was quite recent, and this is something that, if you like, is kind of ongoing. So I felt we've managed to inform and influence the progress of this development. And I know that, for example, subsequently, update has been given to all the community councils now. You've caught up with the last ones. So it does feel like we've made progress.
Anybody else want to come in on that one? I'm all fingers and thumbs today. No, members, thank you for all your responses. But I now invite you to ask some of our officers here any questions on the updates. So if any would like to start and ask any questions.
Sorry, members, just to give you a quick summary and explanation of the process for this next report. So this is the update report setting out progress against adopted action plans. The Council's assurance processes require each relevant Overview and Scrutiny Committee to receive an annual progress update against proposals for improvement and recommendations received from our external auditors. Following scrutiny, recommendations and other comments made by you as a committee relating to these updates will then be reported back to our Governance and Audit Committee to fulfil those assurance purposes. We ask that as a committee, you ensure that you are satisfied that appropriate progress has been made towards Audit Wales proposals for improvement, and if not, to challenge the officers or exec member present as to the reasons for insufficient progress. Equally, should you decide progress has been made and all proposals actioned, as a committee you could agree to remove the item from this further annual monitoring. As you will see from the updates contained within the pack, it has been recommended that some referrals have now been fully actioned and therefore with members' agreement could be removed from further monitoring in these annual update reports. Can I please assure members, as I did with the previous report, that just because you may decide to remove a section of the updates from this pack, it doesn't mean that that will be precluded from further scrutiny in the year ahead. Can I remind members that you are not here to scrutinise these items in isolation today. You're here to focus on whether sufficient progress has been made against addressing those recommendations. So the first update there is the WAO review of how local government manages demand homelessness.
Anyone have any questions they'd like to bring forward?
I think I know that this has been an area of considerable concern to the exec member and lead officers, and we've had member seminars in relation to this. I guess it would be just to ask the exec member if he feels that he has seen some progress, and particularly when it comes to perhaps increased training for staff and officers as a whole.
Well, progress, I think it's important to see it in the context of the worsening general outlook, I think, is probably the way to look at it, because I think that what the hand that we've been dealt, and it's not just us, it's everyone across Wales and I dare say across the UK, it's just got worse. You know, I'm not going to go into too much depth, but you know, the recent news about interest rate rises and therefore mortgage payments, you know, increasing significantly. My own, you know, my own will go up by several hundred pounds next year when we're due for renewal. So this will translate in more people being able to pay their mortgage, to keep up with their mortgage payments, and to get a mortgage in the first place, which will translate to more people having to move into the private sector, and more competition in the private sector, and more people moving into the socially rented sector. So I would fully expect to see an increase in homeless presentations, unfortunately, increasingly challenging and stressful workloads for our teams. So any progress that we're making in that sort of respect, I think, is against the tidal wave of the general outlook that we're dealing with. So we're making progress, but I mean, it's one step forward and several steps back, because what they're having to deal with is just impossible. So it's not a positive outlook, I'm afraid.
Thank you, David. Do you else want to come in?
So, members, if I can just draw your attention then to the summary update. It does say, recommend in there, that at this stage all of the actions have been carried out and whilst work is still ongoing and evolving, the actions suggested have been addressed and as such consideration should be given to removing from further monitoring. Are members happy that this review now is removed from further monitoring?
Can I just clarify? I was aware of the point that you made, that we're still to see the impact of an awful lot of rented accommodation being sold, and I think that's going to continue. So I would think that it would be important to keep that and other aspects under review. So I'm not sure about removing it from further monitoring.
So again, that would go back to the point that homelessness is an item that is listed under your vision impact. That's not necessarily in response to the recommendations from audit, if that's okay.
Linda, do you want to come in, please?
Yes, this is a difficult one because it has got the potential for things to progress in a worse direction again. But from a scrutiny sort of point of view, is there anything that we can add? You know, there's been a lot of tightening up on procedures, information for staff, support going in. Is there anything we can add to that package of ensuring that the services that are being provided are the best we can offer within the resources that are available? Is just something I'd like an opinion on, please.
David, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you for that. No, I think it's a really fair challenge in terms of what can go, what further action can be taken in this area. I'd suggest it's one to consider as part of the broader discussion on visioning in that context. In terms of the document here, most of the actions here were around that tightening up of process and procedure. I suggest, in terms of those updates, that most of those actions, certainly I as an officer am comfortable, have been achieved in terms of this. That's not to say that there's not more work to do on homelessness and that it's not a valid area to discuss, but in terms of this document, I'd suggest that that's been achieved.
Thank you, David.
That's great, thanks.
Do you want to come in?
Thank you. I think that clarifies the thing. You know, that I think the differentiation between this bit and our visioning is helpful, because I think we'd want to keep an eye on and consider that within visioning, but I'm satisfied in terms of the response that it could come off the monitoring.
Yeah.
I will just add that we've got a seminar in October updating members, and it should hopefully be timely because we're going into the winter period when traditionally these sorts of issues spike. So that's an opportunity for members to see the figures and to look at it into greater depth themselves. And you know, you can always next year you can say, look, you know, we would like to look at this again, and we can always provide like a soft update to members on a sort of a semi-regular basis of the figures, because it remains an acute issue, and it will remain an acute issue, I would say, dominating the next decade. So if that helps set the scene.
No,
not sure.
Are we happy with that response?
Yeah.
Thank you. We're now going on to the WA review of strategic commissioning of accommodation services for adults with learning difficulties.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm looking at the update at the bottom here. I note it's revisiting the market position statement, and we've touched on that in terms of looking back at the reviews, and we've made a suggestion that we come back to look at that in a year or so's hence. So, as such, I would suggest that that's probably our position. This is ongoing work, clearly, but I feel that a lot of things have gone forward, have been detailed here in terms of the update. So I would be happy that we try and pick it up in terms of our work programme a year hence.
Anyone else want to come in? Are we satisfied? Review is the front door to adult social care. Have your views on that, please. Everyone happy? Any more progress? Anyone want to come in? Dave?
Again, Chair, I think this is one that I, for one, would be interested in looking at in the visioning session, particularly since, as has been noted, adult services join the communities division, and we might see some change. So I feel this is one for us to look at visioning, but, you know, it's a live issue for us, perhaps, fair to say, for review next year.
But you're satisfied, members, with those recommendations?
Yeah. Okay. Right. The next review is the corporate arrangements for the safeguarding of children. Everyone happy that progress has been made? No one wants to come in and say anything? The review of rough sleeping in Wales is everyone's problem, but no one's responsibility. David, do you want to come in, please?
I think I'd pick this up a little bit in relation to the homelessness, really. We've said we want to look at that within the sort of visioning process, and there are some things that are being developed, it's outlining here. So I feel this is something that is probably ongoing and one for us to consider in that way. But I think in terms of the response to the audit, I think we've done what we can do.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. And just to back that up with the officer's recommendations here, that at this stage all work has been completed in order to address the raw audit recommendations.
Okay. So we're all satisfied with progress? Okay. Review is the Audit Wales review on direct payments for adult social care.
Members, just to highlight, this is a more recent Audit Wales review, so it may be that you want to keep that on for another year, maybe just to monitor progress, but it's entirely up to you.
Agree. Jane?
Yeah, I would just agree with that. Quite a few of the things saying waiting for this to be finished, it's a 2 or 3 year project. It's all still sort of ongoing. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Yes, because it's fairly new on our agenda, so we need to keep abreast of things. Linda?
Yeah, just to agree with that going forward to next year, and direct payments is something that can have a direct impact on the difficult social care situation. So trying to improve the uptake would be something that we could look at with visioning.
That comes from So members, can I remind you that the visiting session to determine our works programme for the year ahead is going to take place. So please don't anyone go offline, but stay online and stay in contact. Just to point out that the next session will not be webcast, but to advise you that the next formal meeting of the Healthier Committee will take place at 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 14th of September. So thank you for your attendance, your contributions, but please remain online for our visiting session.